Hi, Year 11. This is just following on from today's class about how to use the alarm template for getting your responses ready. Now, I know it says here alarm template for responses, but this one that we've done today is not so much about the response. It will eventually lead to the response, of course, but it's more about going through the text to articulate what it is that what point we're trying to make. So in this case, it's more about our learning. You've got to remember, ALARM stands for a learning and response matrix. So this particular matrix that we have filled out is our first matrix. So this is more about learning than about the responding. However, what we do have in here will lead into our response, but it's more about getting to that higher order thinking at this point. So from there, thinking about that, this is the idea of where we're learning from. You'll see our first row is identify and define. Here in this box where we've got our questions is what's the significant event, conflict, character in the text, the plot summary, one sentence. For us, in this case, we're going beyond those simple things and thinking about actual concepts or ideas that we're drawing from the text. So we've talked about the fact that we have Minna on one hand and Lucy on the other hand, and how different these two women are as they're represented in the text. And so as we discussed in class, we decided to talk about the conflict between Minna as the mother and Lucy as the single female and sexual female, and how they create otherness. Now you'll notice it's not a full sentence. It's written almost like a dot point. It's because at this point in time, I'm not filling it out to make it perfect for my response. This is the idea I have. Now I'm going to see, excuse me. Now I'm going to see if it actually works. So here it's just literally what is the idea that I want to explore. In describe is, as we've got here, what do we see and hear? What are the techniques? What are the language forms and features? What are our pieces of evidence? You want to put in at least 3 pieces of evidence at this point. More if you can. You can make the describe as big as you need to back up so that you can work through what this is. I would also, in describe, now we didn't do it today because we talked about it in class, but I would also at the beginning of describe, before I put in my quotes and techniques, I would elaborate on what this means. And eventually in our response, that's what you're going to have, an elaboration on it. But at this point, what we did today, we just went through and we started putting in our quotes and what we had found in the text. I haven't even gone into too much information about techniques at this point because this is my first response for getting my ideas. I would add those layers in later. I could add them in now as well, but at this point, that's not what I wanted to do. So as you can see, I've got here, Minna represents the mother figure who draws the attention of the male when she states, "We women have something of the mother in us that makes us rise above smaller matters when the mother spirit is invoked." Now, you'll see here, I've got words like likewise, further, although, contrastingly. Now, these are my words of analysis and my linking words, my words of argument. I would, in my first draft of this, when I'm doing it just as a learning concept, I wouldn't always put those words in, but I actually do put them in because I want them to be always part of my vocabulary so that when I'm writing under exam conditions, I just automatically use my argumentative words. So I would suggest that you always just put them in. And also you can see, because I've got the although and I've got contrastingly here, down here, sorry, I am starting to think about how these things compare and contrast. So I've got the quote about Minna as the mother spirit invoked. I've got likewise, Minna's very name means resolute protector. Further, Van Helsing describes Minna's mother in nature as she's one of God's women, fashioned by his own hand to show us men and other women that there is heaven where we can enter, where we can enter, and that its light can be here on earth, so true, so sweet, so noble, so little and egoist. And that, let me tell you, is much in the age, so skeptical and selfish. And then I've got the quote where Minna argues against the new woman. Some of the new women writers will someday start an idea that men and women should be allowed to see each other asleep before proposing or accepting. But I suppose the new woman won't condescend in future to accept. She'll be doing the proposing herself, and a nice job she will make of it too. There's some consolation in that. I've actually said here that she argues against the new woman, but I actually don't think she is arguing against the new woman when I look at that, back on that. So I would probably change that, which is why this is a first draft. And then I have, contrastingly, Lucy is the sexual object that wants more than one husband and takes the blood of 3 men, symbolic of semen. I would have to put in there, find quotes. When she writes in her letter to Minna, why can't I marry both? Why can't I have both? Which is, as we've discussed in class, the reason why she must die, when we look at it as a gender representation, in terms of what her outcome in the text. Anyway, going on. Explain what is the purpose and effect of the technique, what is the mood, tone, feeling, atmosphere that is created. So here you're talking about what you've got happening up here and what is the impact of that in terms of the mood, the tone, and the atmosphere. So I've talked about the religious connotations, and we do have religious connotations in this quote here by Van Helsing. The religious connotations used to describe Minna as the mother suggest an allusion to the Virgin Mary and Mother of God. This is contrasted to the way Lucy is described. And again, I've got fine quotes because, as you know, in class I didn't actually have the text with me to pull out all the quotes, which creates an atmosphere of disdain for the sexual female. Then in analyse, we go a bit further. What's the relationships? Are they positive? Are they negative? And how is the audience positioned? So although the relationship between Minna and Lucy is intimate as represented through their correspondence and long walks together, there is a distinct contrast between the relationship with men between the two women. Again, I need to work on that word in a bit there. Likewise, see, I'm using my words of argument and link into just to make sure I'm always using them. The audience is ultimately positioned to fear Lucy as she becomes the undead and anti-mother who drinks on the blood of children. Then in interpret, this is where I would put in, we have to put in what's the universal meaning? What's the themes that's coming out? If this was a concept study, what's the concept we're learning? What's the meaning that goes beyond the text for all of us to learn from? So arguably, again, using my words of argument, arguably the text is suggesting that the mother figure is the more desirable figure in society and that it is only the sexual female that becomes other to society. And I've got to that conclusion based on everything that I've got going on up here. So it's a bit like maths and showing you working out. Then critically analyse. Here, what's the context? How are these relationships positive and negative? What's the purpose of it all, and what kind of perspective is the composer wanting us to take? So contextually, the position of the sexual female as other draws links between Lucy and the emerging new woman. Although it can be argued that Minna is the new woman with her typewriter and scientific documentation, Minna nonetheless takes on a subservient role to the man which is ultimately revered. This is symbolically reinforced at the novel's end when Lucy is executed and Minna becomes an actual mother. And then, of course, you need to do your evaluation. To what extent has it been successful or effective in achieving its purpose? It is evident that Dracula not only presents a representation of the female as two conflicted halves, it affirms the idolization of the mother and reinforces the dominant patriarchal social values that the new woman is to be feared. Now, I actually, I would actually change that now that I've read this quote again, and this is what happens when we're doing things as a draft. Um, I can see that perhaps Minna is a bit more supportive of the new woman. Having said that, I probably wouldn't change my argument too much because they kill off Lucy and they make Minna a mother, and she goes on to play in her supportive role, which Van Helsing thinks is the ultimate role for women. So based on all of that, that's when I would actually get to my what is the topic, that topic sentence on my thesis that's coming from this particular thing. I would then take this and fill out another alarm matrix and refine it and start developing it further so that I start to get my response. And I would do it for the other texts as well, and really look at those social values and cultural values that we want to get through, because that's what the course requires. Okay, good luck. And if you've got questions, let me know.